Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadguru Pranatosmyaham. In verse 5, the basis of the discussion was that the only solution for discovering your limitless nature is knowledge. And the reason for this was, if you investigate into someone's experience, into your own experience, you will see that you always ever do an action to remove a condition that you believe you have upon you. And that condition is never pleasant. If that condition was pleasant, would you engage in any action to remove that condition? No. So this means whenever there's a condition that I've put myself into, that I've associated myself with, then that condition becomes as good as I. Therefore, the way to temporarily seize this condition is by engaging in an action for the sake of doing such. Therefore, from this, we can infer that if every action is always for the sake of removing a suffering entity, then clearly it stands to reason I do not know the nature of that entity. Because according to Vedanta, the nature of self is full. That is your nature. Full, whole, and complete, missing nothing, at peace, at ease with your existence. And yet here I am engaging in an action, in some form of a sadhana, to complete myself, to be someone, to be bigger, to be freer, to be happier, to be some worthy human being. And yet Vedanta says you are already that which is the whole. Therefore it stands to reason to say thus, action cannot remove that limited entity, because action arises out of a limited entity. And that limited entity, whose nature is full, means I am governed by ignorance. I do not know who I really am. And therefore then you ask, what opposes ignorance? It cannot be action, because we said that action is an effect and the cause is ignorance. Every action arises from not knowing that I'm whole, full, and complete right now. So now what opposes ignorance? Because ignorance is basically I don't know. Now how do I know? By gaining knowledge pertinent to that which I do not know. So this means that we have to now gain that knowledge of what is the self. And then we continued this argument stating the nature of every action, if you analyze this further, is it always depends upon an entity, a limited being who has a choice and says, I'm going to meditate, I'm not going to meditate, or I'm going to do something different altogether. So in other words, any action is always dependent upon Purusha. Thus we call it Purusha Tantra, dependent upon the Purusha. But when it comes to knowing the nature of something, that becomes Vastu Tantra, then it's dependent upon the nature of that which is to be known. And since I am a limited suffering entity, at least I believe myself to be, but in truth I am full, whole, and complete, which I do not know, then obviously I have to engage in an inquiry to know the full nature of that which is not known to me right now. Therefore, the nature of knowledge becomes Vastu Tantra. It's dependent upon knowing the truth of what is. Such as, if I take, for instance, this is a metal cup. I can say this is a glass. My opinion about this has no bearing on what this actually is. This is a metal cup and it's round. I can say this is a square glass. Both the glass and the square are wrong. That is my own opinion. That is my own Purusha Tantra. It's dependent on my own opinion. But this has no bearing on my opinion about it. In that same way, when it comes the object of inquiry becomes the self, that one who always starts his sentences with I, when it's about the nature of the self, then whatever I say about the self, that the self is in the future, the self has no bearing on what I say about the self. The truth is the self is here and now. It is you. And so whatever I say about the self is as it is. If I say the self doesn't exist, it cannot be attained, the self is as it is. So this means you have no choice but to arrive to the understanding of what the self truly is. And so to continue this inquiry, we're going to verse 6, and it says, how do you come to this? Through guidance. Verse 6. Ataha vicharaha kartavyaha jijnasoho atma vastunaha samasadya daya sindhum gurum brahmavid uttamam. So what happens next is one approaches a teacher who is an ocean of compassion and the knowers of Brahman. Inquiry into the truth of oneself is to be done by the means of a teacher. Now, how does an inquiry start? Does anyone start an inquiry when they're extremely happy? You have to have a certain amount of recognition that life is limited to start an inquiry. In fact, this is why Earth is a good place for that. And so, from unhappiness, from incompletion, an inquiry starts. Now, the thing with inquiry, when we say Atma Vichara or self-inquiry, is that we often think that the self is something to whom I have to ask. I have to invoke. I have to say, who am I? Like I'm asking, who am I? Who am I? What am I? Now this is something very common we see. Who am I? But the thing with this is the self already knows who it is. So there's no point asking what is the nature of the self. Who am I? Who am I? You already know who you are. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that I'm alive, aware, and existent. Everyone knows that. So that question is not going to give you the answer, because the self doesn't need to know who it is. It's already whole, full, and complete. How can that which is whole, full, and complete require an answer to be understood? The second mistake that an inquirer makes is that they engage in what's called an inner or internal deep sea diving. So now they try to look within somewhere, in some place, in some chakra, in some place, and somewhere, and they try to kind of wait for the self to answer, I am the self. They want the self to sort of announce itself with a voice, with a certain vision, with a certain bright light somewhere. So now what are they doing? They're localizing the self to one single body. I'm going to find the self in my body, and yet the self is the whole thing. And the second mistake is that when you're internal sea diving, you're localizing the self and putting it into space. It's located over here and it's not located over here. So now the self, that which is the truth of all things, is now localized within one place. So this again becomes a mistake. We all do this. We always, if you want something, I look somewhere. But the self is that which is all pervasive. So I can't look for it in any one particular place, nor let alone one body. So this becomes the challenge. Furthermore, we have terms like pratyaga atma, which means an inner self. So now when you hear the inner self, you go, oh, okay, so the self is inner, somewhere inside me. And then that further confuses you, because they say, there's an inner self. And you go, oh, inner self, I guess it's not out there. So you're not the self, this is only inner self. Let me find some inner self in here. So all these terms that a beginner inquirer hears, they add extra levels of complexity. And because that happens, the verse continues, you need a compassionate teacher to guide you out of this era. And thus it continues and says, the teacher, by the teacher's presence, they help you not to turn the self into another object, into a light, into a sensation, into a location. This becomes a mistake. And therefore, they have what? Daya Sindhu, an ocean of compassion. Why? Because the teacher works tirelessly, helping those who want clarity. They have no agenda for themselves because their own teachers have done so much for them. What can you possibly give if you are the whole already? Who is there to gain? Who is there to lose? Thus the teacher, ocean of compassion, becomes a living instrument to deliver this knowledge to others. It's simple as that. There's no agenda. There's no sort of, I am going to get something out of it. That doesn't exist anymore. And so this is the parampara. Now, when the teacher speaks, to the teacher, the acharya, the guru, to them, the world is like a dream. It's like a dream. No real reality to anything. I like Adi Shankara's Bhaja Govindam. He says the world is utterly essenceless. There's no essence here. You're just dealing with pictures, mere images, appearances. And the teacher understands this. But then the student comes and says, you know, I've got issues like this, and I've got family, and I've got this, and I've got that. Now the teacher has to pretend that this relatively, what the student considers an absolutely real problem, the teacher has to pretend like it's an absolutely real problem. Because you can't just dismiss them. Just like in chapter 2, verse 10, Krishna, Prahasa iva, as though smiling, says to Arjuna. That's when the teaching starts, 2:11 in Gita. As though smiling, Krishna didn't put a big grin on his face, ha ha ha, you're in trouble. But as though smiling, because Krishna recognizes as a teacher, I've been through this countless of times. Since beginningless times, I've been through this phenomena. And here we go again. Arjuna is again asking the same question. So therefore, the teacher has to show a certain amount of patience to those who still take their body as real, as their family as real, their kids as absolutely real, their job and their life, my life, as real. The truth is, you have no life. That's the truth. But provisionally, the teacher pretends, yes, there is a life, you have a body, you have a personality, but all these things in truth, they have no connection to you. And so this is the path to which we are moving on to. And what is required to come to this? Verse 7, the student's qualifications. Adhikarinam ashaste pala siddhi visheshataha upaya desha kala adyaha santi asmin saha karinaha. Qualifications are required for self-knowledge. Time, place, and circumstances are auxiliary means. Shankara here says, who is the main determinant of success? And the truth is, there's a tendency to blame the environment. There's a tendency to blame external situations, like the guru, they're not good enough, or the environment's too hot, or too loud, or too quiet, or the students stink, or the teacher's like this, right? So you just create these stories to feel good about yourself. But Adi Shankara says, according to him, the primary determinant of success is you. Now, have you ever had a time in your life where something was so important to you, you had to know it, that no matter what happened outside, what environment you were in, you were just laser focused. You were able to just narrow vision. You know that experience? Yeah. Everything just faded away. Suddenly, all those things that you otherwise would have complained about, they became unimportant because you knew the relevance of that to me. And so your mind automatically zoned in. And the things were happening all around you. No, don't disturb me. And you were just constantly focused. This is a natural byproduct of recognizing the value of what you're connecting to. So Adi Shankara here says, you see, if you plant a seed in a desert, no matter how good that seed is, that seed will never grow because the environment in which it's planted is not right. In that same way, the seed of knowledge that is planted in the following course, if I plant it in a mind that's like a desert, no matter how good the knowledge is, it simply will not take hold. And that's the truth. That is why ultimately you are the primary determinant of success. It was never others. It was never others. It only seemed like others to kind of make oneself feel a little bit better about oneself. But the truth is, this is entirely in your hands, and it always was. And that's why I put that training balance scale. How do you make something so relevant to yourself that you're automatically just zoning in? That's absolutely possible. And you need to discover your own psychology and physiology how to do that. It's possible. And so he then says, what would happen if you plant a seed inside an unfertile mind? Yeah, you know what's going to happen. Selective listening. I want to hear that. I don't want to hear this. Confirmation bias. I only want to hear what I already want to hear. If you mention something about some teaching, yeah, okay, get on with it. Get on that. I'm switched off. And then the moment the topic changes, now I'm on. This becomes an erroneous way to learn. The way that Vedanta works, it needs to penetrate every facet of your mind. Because the mind is basically ridden with false notions. So we have to correct them. So one can, for a moment, pause and say, where am I, or where might I be resisting the inputs in this moment? Just to be aware of it. That's it. That's the first step. Very interesting. I saw once Dr. Phil. Look at this. Here's an example of I like Dr. Phil. He's a good psychologist, and he deals with some of the most challenging situations. It's also good drama. And what happened is a young woman came to him, and she says, I'm pregnant. And the mother, how it's the daughter and the mother sit across Dr. Phil. And the mother says, no, she's not. She's been saying this for 2 years. But the daughter says, no, I'm pregnant because I feel the kicks in my belly, so that's proof enough. Now, no matter how much the mother tried, she couldn't convince her daughter out of this delusion. Dr. Phil also tried. He couldn't get her out of this delusion. But what happened was, whenever the idea of childbirth came along, you could see her perk up, like happy, like motherhood happy. Now, was that perking up, was that based on a reality or a delusion? Remember, she's been pregnant for 2 years. It was based on her own delusional idea. And yet she's still perked up, happy. Isn't that interesting? So she perked up based on a false idea she's been carrying. So in that same way, when we hear about the self, and we say the self is that which is limitless and free, and the person has an idea, because their mind is still like a desert, they have an idea, the self is, it's some amazing thing that I'm going to be in contact with, and they perk up. They're perking up based on a delusional idea. So careful. When you perk up, ask yourself, based on what? On the basis of what? Because the self is nothing to be perked up about. You are the self already. To be perked up is to imply it's something new. But it's not anything new. It's what I already am right now. So this is an example how the mind misinterprets something, and then it finds joy based on its own delusional idea. And even worse, now when you mention the real self, because your delusion is so big, the teacher has no chance to compete. Because the self is that which is normal, ordinary. And I'm like, I've got this, I carry this huge idea. So we have to drop these ideas back down to ground. This is called humility. Nothing to be perked up about. It's a matter of knowledge, knowing what is. Simple. There's another story of in the Puranas, I think, or Bhagavatam, of Indra and Virochana. And both of them, they were studying in heaven. Now the commentary says, can you find a better place to study than in heaven? When you're not even hungry, you don't even have to worry about the heat. You're in a perfect environment in heaven to study. They were both in heaven, studying Brahma Vidya, self-knowledge. Same thing that we're doing now. And who was the teacher? Brahmaji. The ruler of the rulers, the smartest guy in the universe, the one who knows everything. And then a commentary says, can you have a better teacher? No. So you can't have a better environment and you can't have a better teacher. Indra and Virochana were sitting, and Indra walked out with a wonderful perspective change. He recognized the truth. He was educated and he walked out. But Virochana, the commentary says, he walked out as the same idiot as before. He had a perfect teacher and a perfect environment. Perfect. You can't get higher than that. But his attitude with which he brought himself into the class, nobody could compete with that. Not even the best environment nor the teacher. Therefore, Adi Shankara says, you are the main determinant of your success. You author your own moksha. That's the truth. And that's liberating in itself. There is no more, I'm not born in the right environment. Nobody is. What is the right environment anyway? Therefore, verse 8 continues, Sadhanani atra chatvari katitani manishi bhihi yeshu satsu eva sanishta yat abhave na siddhyati. So very quick here, without the teacher, the self-knowledge will not take place. For that you need the 4 qualifications. That's the essence of the verse. If you don't have these 4 qualifications that we're going to talk about, so now we're going to go into the actual, what do I need to have that fertile soil in my mind? Then what's going to happen is, and I've seen this before, Vedanta gets used as a comparative study. Let me compare Vedanta with religion, with Buddhism. And the moment someone walks in with that, it's most likely inauthentic. Because what makes an authentic person, an authentic learner? You want to transform your life, isn't it? That's what an authentic learner is. If I come in thinking, I just want to see Vedanta is here and this is here and I just want to compare them, that's never going to work. Because until it becomes personal, the knowledge doesn't have power to penetrate that, to change one's perspective. And very interesting, depending on who you go to, they will also interpret the entire Upanishads differently. For example, the Purva Mimamsakas, this is the group that does actions, they say that the Vedic sentences are a matter of allowing certain actions and prohibiting others. In other words, what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do, which is transactionally useful. However, when it comes to statements like Tattvamasi, the Mahavakya that we'll be learning about, you are that. Depending on what you follow is how you interpret that. Do you know how they will interpret that? You use that as an upasana, as a meditation. So you just close your eyes, Tattvamasi, Tattvamasi, Tattvamasi. And what's going to happen? You're going to gain punyam through that. And when you gain punyam, obviously you will get more, higher worlds and heaven. So it's really interesting, depending on the kind of mind that looks at this text, is the kind of interpretation that you'll get out of it. And so they will say then, sentences like namati, which is to bow down, ham shivaya namami, I bow down to Shiva. So they will say the most important words in the Vedas are those verbs that end with ti or ami. And everything else qualifies, is in the name of that verb. So the whole world is about just action. Namami, gacchami, okay? Bodhami. So in other words, I think, I walk, I bow down to. And all these other words are just there to sort of support that whole action. But then Vedanta comes in and says, we disagree. The Vedas are not about encouraging or discouraging actions. The actions are there to purify your mind, to help you mature, gain experience in the world. But what the Vedas are actually talking about is an ever true fact that we all miss because we're too caught up in actions. And so they say, no. Tattvamasi is not to be meditated upon, it's to be inquired into. So the whole paradigm changes. Now you say, well, why does it change like this? And then the verse says, because you need to be an adhikari. The true import of the Vedas can only be ascertained if it's seen through the eyes of a qualified person. So not having the right qualifications, the right subtlety of the mind, what will I do? I will look at the entire text as a means for action and no action. Thus, you can see the importance now, what happens without the qualifications. What are these qualifications? Verse 9. Adau nitya anitya vastu vivekaha pariganyate iha mutra pala bhoga viragaha tat anantaram shama adi shat sampattihi mumukshutvam iti sputam. Someone read please, nice and loud. The first qualification, nitya nitya vastu vivekaha. So this is the first and most important. Discriminative inquiry. Having a mind that's capable of discerning what is permanent and impermanent. Now naturally these things start off small. You know, what's more permanent is a stable relationship. What's less permanent is a flick, a one-night stand. So it starts out very simple. But then this very simple viveka eventually becomes so sublime and so subtle that it's now capable of discerning what is permanent at all times and what is impermanent. So see how it shifted? It was within permanent and impermanent within the world of impermanent. Now it eventually says the world of impermanent is always impermanent, no matter how permanent seemingly things are. So there is only impermanent and there is permanent. There's only two. There's no third option. There's no somewhere in between. That's called impermanent. It's either permanent or impermanent. And the nitya anitya vastu, in other words, I'm able to discern between the vastu, the reality of permanent and impermanent. And so, what does this mean? Until you come to this understanding, how many impermanents, which seem permanent, are you going to chase for? Until you have the full nitya anitya vastu. Infinite, right? And how long is that going to take? How many possibilities do you have on your hands to exhaust? Millions. Wow, what a hard job, isn't it? Second qualification. Iha mutra pala bhoga viraga. This is freedom from longing. Now I call this seeing the pros and cons of things, because I know you've heard, this freedom from longing before. So what does this mean? You recognize the pros and cons of all things in this world. That's called objectivity. There is a pro to everything, isn't there? You can't say that the world is entirely, in a con. It's also a pro. So I see the pros of the world and I see the con. I see a pro of a relationship, but I also see the con. I see the pro of marriage, I also see the con. I see the pro of one gender, I also see the con. I see the pro of having a certificate on the wall, I also see the con. I see the pro of coming here, I also see the con. There's a pro and con to everything. There's a pro and con to your personality, pro and con to everyone that you know. That means you are neither for one side nor the other. You're in between looking at the pros and cons. So when I see the pros and cons of objects, I assess, ultimately, though there is a pro and a con, ultimately they are impermanent. Therefore, as a result of my viveka, what develops? Viraga, dispassion, objectivity. As a result of using your intellect to discern what is permanent and impermanent, what happens? How do you start to look at objects? With a certain amount of objectivity, pros and cons. That's called dispassion. So here dispassion is, I have dispassion, or I recognize the limitations of all enjoyments here and thereafter. Not only here on earth, but even in heaven. I recognize the limitations of all that. And so this dispassion, see, this is not what we call jihasa. Jihasa viraga in Sanskrit means disenchantment. Disenchantment or dissatisfaction is not what we're talking about. See, some people take this dispassion as I am disenchanted with the world, and the world is a bad place, and so I'm going to run away. You see this in Tirumavalai sometimes. You know, there's some people walking there. Why? Because they're disenchanted with the world. And you call that dispassion. That is not dispassion in Vedanta, as we will see. Jihasa viraga, fleeing to spiritual places. How can that be dispassion? All that is here is one, Ishvara. Where is there to go? From Ishvara to Ishvara. And the third qualification is Shamadhi Shatka Sampati, the sixfold disciplines. Now, as a product of Viveka, we've got Viraga, or sometimes Vairagyam. And as a product of Vairagyam, dispassion, what's the natural byproduct? 6 qualifications that automatically come. You see, we often think you have to develop this. But actually the 6 that come are a product of developing discernment, strong cognitive discernment, and dispassion, the pros and cons of things. And what are they? Shama. This is when your mind is actively assessing things in the light of the goals and values that you care about. Do you know this? When your mind comes across something and it assesses, is this in the line of my goals and values or not? You have this experience? Were you able to reject things that are not in line with your values, that don't follow your value systems? Why do you do that? Why are you able to say no? When you say no to something, what makes you say no? Are you trying to be evil when you say no? Or are you just being discerning when you say no? You're just being discerning, isn't it? So Shama, imagine your mind is like a manager. You know what a manager does? They control the flow of thoughts in and out. So sometimes the mind just tends to go on a tangent, isn't it? So what does the manager do? No, this is not enough. Get out. Thought, get out. Shama is also when you actively observe your mind. Actively observing. Observing the kind of thoughts that are coming in and out and saying, no, this is not a good thought. Replacing it with a different kind of a thought. Why? Because for so long you've had the same thoughts over and over. So we need to kind of just take a moment and deliberately say, no, I don't want this thought, different kind of thought. Let me look at the, someone, suppose you look at someone and you don't have a nice thought about them. So what happens? What's Shama? You're saying, I'm doing the same thing I've always done before. Let me replace that. Let me look at their pain. Where might they be coming from? Okay, so they're driven by pressures. So let me not judge them because I'm not kind of addressing where they come from. The second is Dhamma. Dhamma is your capacity to refuse sensory lures. You know, when you see something very attractive in the shop or, opposite gender, and then the mind goes. So what is Dhamma? Intentionally saying, no, I'm going to stop this, suppressing it. So it is requiring a little bit of a pullback, like, no, I don't want this chocolate. Put the chocolate aside. Sometimes that's required because the mind is not strong enough, so you have to stop yourself physically. You have to come out of the environment and say no. The third is Uparati. Uparati, this is a natural withdrawal as a result of all your Viveka and Vairagya. Natural withdrawal from things that don't serve your self-growth. It's not something that you choose. It's something that naturally happens because you recognize the pros and cons of things. So you naturally withdraw from those things that don't have a high value and more into those things that are in service of self-knowledge, the scriptures, and your own self-growth. That's Uparati. And then Titiksha. Okay. How many of us, as kids, were complaining about things, we didn't like, oh, it's too hot, it's too cold, oh, the environment, and when we got criticized, we fell down, we broke apart. When somebody complimented us, we perked up. We enjoyed certain things, but we totally hated the other things. How many of us did that? Oh, yeah. Do we do that now? Yeah. Plus or minus, right? So it doesn't mean it's going to completely go away. We all have like a little bit of that, oh, I would prefer this option. But the tiksha is really recognizing that life is a series of opposites, isn't it? You can't go one without the other. You can't get a praise without a criticism, nor the other way around. You can't get cold without a hot. You can't get youth without old age. You can't get health without disease. You can't get dullness without sharpness, or sharpness without dullness. So recognizing that the world is a series of duality, a series of opposites, one comes to just naturally accept, I've had a good life, but now in this stage of my life, things are not going that well. But that's okay, because that is how it is. And it's supposed to be like that. You're not supposed to have, by the way, a great life all along. And anyone who shows you as such, careful. Yeah, it's probably not true. It's very easy to put a fake mask on and it's all happy, but behind the scenes there's always that small child who's, experiencing abandonment issues and so on. So we all have this. Therefore, titiksha is enduring pairs of opposites. Just enduring it. It's okay. That things don't have to make me comfortable all the time. You know those people, they're like, princess, oh, make me comfortable. And if you don't, oh man, your day is off, gone. That's not a good choice to be with in that one. My first girlfriend was like that. You had a girlfriend like that. But she was too pretty to say no to her. So this is a man thing. He's willing to put up. And then samadhana. This is just focused attention. So as a result of knowing what you want and not being bothered by pairs of opposites, naturally, right, you're going to have more concentration, just naturally available more focus and not being so disturbed, samadhana. And shraddha is open-mindedness. So these are the 6 qualifications. And the fourth one is mumukshutva, which we talked about, which is utter obsession or eagerness for liberation. Okay, verse 10, I'm just going to now go through them again very quickly. Viveka, Brahma satyam jagat mithya iti evam rupaha vinishchayaha saha ayam nitya anitya vastu vivekaha samudhahritaha. Ascertainment in this form that Brahman is eternal and the world is time-bound is presented as a discriminative understanding between the permanent and the impermanent. Every human pursuit has one single goal. There's no two goals, anyone. It's always one goal. Freedom from suffering, freedom from pain, freedom from any kind of condition on me. And freedom from smallness, freedom from insignificance, freedom from unworthiness, freedom from not being loved, freedom from not being heard or seen or validated. Freedom from all of that. That's what we all want. Now, why do we all want that? And how do we pursue that? We pursue that in money, wealth, security, naturally. And what is required, what Viveka says is, knowing that, you have to ask yourself, what am I really looking for? Objects or freedom from the need to need objects in order to be free? Let me simplify that. What am I looking for? Objects or freedom from objects? Can you relate to this? What are you really looking for? Because if you are looking for objects, if you have that discernment, you will recognize that that object is not going to be desirous forever, because you change eventually. Your own preferences change. So the very object is now suddenly an object of aversion. Buyer's remorse, exactly. I want my money back. I want my time back. So which one are you looking for? So that's what's called Viveka. Am I looking for objects and experiences and the need to chase experiences and to be there to have one and then to go out of it and then have the whole crash the next day? Or am I just looking for freedom that I don't need any of that because I'm okay with myself as I am? That's Viveka. So when you come to see that I'm actually looking freedom from objects, all forms of objects, in the future, heaven, heavenly objects, any kind of objects, relationship objects, everything, what's going to happen when an ordinary person hears this? That there is nothing to look forward to in this world. Go back to that verse of suicide, the line there. What do I look for in this world then? There's no meaning and purpose. That's a problem, isn't it? But then the verse continues, says, if you conclude that everything is time-bound and there is no real essence to everything, it's not worthy of pursuit because it will disappoint you sooner or later, then, there's no reason to live. Because we only live on the basis of what? Objects that we cherish. He says, the teaching thus continues and says, though this jagat is impermanent, it's mithya, it's impermanent, there is something else that is there that you missed out. Brahman is satyam. So if Brahman is satyam, the truth, and jagat is mithya or impermanent, then what is this Brahman? I have to discover that, because this Brahman which you speak of is the permanent and the most treasured and the most delicious and the most vast and the most worthwhile pursuit to have. I want to discover that. How do I discover that? You need to develop vairagyam. Verse 11. Tat vairagyam jihasaya darshana shravana adi bhihi deha adi brahma paryantam hi anityam bhoga vastuni. Absence of longing in all time-bound objects of enjoyment. What does it mean for you to say absence of longing? Absence, I no longer have this need for longing for time-bound objects. Do you feel that statement? I no longer have a need to long for time-bound objects. Yeah, relief. Relief. Because secretly you know it's going to disappoint me. So now dispassion, therefore, does not require to run away from the world, because anything in the world is going to be impermanent anyway. So what are you going to run away from? Impermanent to impermanent. So there's no need to run away from anything geographically to a monastery, because even a monastery is just impermanent. And the people you're going to go there with, they too have their own issues. And you're going to have the same issues that you have in the world. Now you've got monastery issues. Therefore, dispassion becomes looking at objects and recognizing no object has any meaning in this world except the meaning that you give it. That's dispassion. There's no meaning to anything. Because I may have a meaning to, suppose I'm a harmonium player, and to me this is my life, and I give it so much meaning. But to you it's just an object in a corner. So I gave it a lot of meaning. Now if somebody breaks this harmonium, I'm broken. Because I put so much meaning onto it. Therefore, no object really has any meaning. Sorry to say, not even your family has any meaning, except the meaning that you gave them. And this is hard to hear. No object has any meaning except the meaning that I have been attributing to it since day one, over and over and over again, to the point where now I need it, and I'm now longing for it. And now dispassion becomes something that's impossible. Like, what do you mean dispassion? Dispassion requires me to look at it as it is. It's just an harmonium. But I can't. You know why? Because I put so much meaning onto it. So now, my question to you is, to what may you be putting dangerously excessive meaning onto? Think about that. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.